Hello there. My name is Rick, and welcome to another episode of Gaby's Cheating Stories. If you like our stories, please subscribe. It just takes 1 second, and comment from what country are you watching us. Thank you. Now, let's start with today's story. Sometimes we have close people who we love and can be affected because of our choices, even if we didn't want it that way. In this story, we will, what seemed to be a lovely marriage, end up having a terrible night celebration for everyone. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in Boston when Emily Carter first laid eyes on Daniel Thompson. She was a junior at Boston University, majoring in journalism, while he was a senior studying business administration. They met at a coffee shop near campus, both reaching for the last copy of the New York Times. Their hands brushed, and Emily laughed nervously. "You can have it," Daniel said, his deep voice warm and inviting. Emily insisted they share it, and they ended up sitting together for hours, talking about everything from their favorite books to their dreams for the future. Daniel was charming, with his tousled brown hair and a smile that made Emily's heart skip a beat. He had a way of making her feel like she was the only person in the room. "So, what's a girl like you do in a place like this?" he teased, gesturing to the crowded coffee shop. Emily rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her grin. "Studying, obviously. What about you? Shouldn't you be out conquering the business world or something?" Daniel laughed, and that was the moment Emily knew she was in trouble. Over the next few weeks, they spent nearly every day together. Daniel would wait for Emily after her classes, and they'd explore the city from the historic Freedom Trail to the bustling Quincy Market. One evening, as they sat by the Charles River, Daniel turned to her and said, "You know, Emily, I think I'm falling for you." Her heart raced as she replied, "I think I'm falling for you too." They shared their first kiss under the glow of the city lights, and from that moment on, they were inseparable. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Daniel was her rock, always encouraging her to chase her dreams, while Emily brought out a softer, more thoughtful side of him. By the time Daniel graduated, they were deeply in love. He got a job at a prestigious firm in New York, and Emily transferred to Columbia University to be closer to him. "I can't imagine my life without you," Daniel told her one night as they lay in bed. "Me neither," Emily whispered, her heart full. 2 years later, Daniel proposed during a weekend getaway to the Hamptons. They were walking along the beach at sunset when he got down on one knee and pulled out a simple yet elegant diamond ring. "Emily Carter, will you make me the happiest man alive and marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "Yes, Daniel, 1,000 times yes." They married 6 months later in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by family and friends, promising to love each other for better or worse. The first few years of their marriage were a whirlwind of love, laughter, and adventure. Daniel's career was taking off, and Emily had landed a job as a reporter for a major newspaper. They moved into a cozy apartment in Brooklyn, where they spent their weekends exploring the city and hosting dinner parties for their friends. "I can't believe this is our life," Emily said one evening as they sat on their balcony, watching the sunset. "I know," Daniel replied, pulling her close. "It's everything I ever wanted." But as the years went by, the demands of their careers began to take a toll. Daniel was working long hours, often coming home late and exhausted. Emily, on the other hand, was thriving in her job, but starting to feel the strain of their busy schedules. "I miss you," she told him one night as they lay in bed. "I know, babe," Daniel said, kissing her forehead. "Things will calm down soon, I promise." But deep down, Emily wasn't so sure. Despite the challenges, they remained committed to each other. They made a point to have date nights every Friday, whether it was trying a new restaurant or simply staying in and watching a movie. "You're still the most beautiful woman in the world to me," Daniel told her one evening as they danced in their living room. Emily smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were drifting apart. Their love was put to the test when Emily found out she was pregnant. They had talked about starting a family, but the timing wasn't ideal. Daniel was up for a big promotion, and Emily was working on a major investigative piece. "Are we ready for this?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Daniel took her hand and said, "We'll figure out together. We always do." 9 months later, their daughter, Lily, was born, and their lives changed forever. Lily brought them closer together, but it also added a new layer of stress. Daniel was working harder than ever to provide for their growing family, while Emily struggled to balance her career and motherhood. "I feel like I'm failing at everything," she confessed one night after putting Lily to bed. "You're not," Daniel said, holding her tightly. "You're an amazing mom and an incredible wife. We'll get through this, I promise." But as the years went by, Emily couldn't help but wonder if they were losing sight of the love that had brought them together in the first place. By the time Lily was 5, Daniel and Emily had settled into a routine, but the spark that had once defined their relationship was fading. Daniel was now a vice president at his firm, and the pressure was relentless. Emily had taken a step back from her career to focus on raising Lily, but she often felt unfulfilled. "Do you ever think about how things used to be?" Emily asked one evening as they sat on the couch. Daniel sighed. "All the time, but we built a good life. We have each other, and we have Lily." Emily nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She missed the passion and excitement of their early years together. "Remember when we used to dance in the living room?" she asked, a wistful smile on her face. Daniel chuckled. "Yeah, those were the days. Maybe we should do that again sometime." But the moment passed, and they both knew it wouldn't happen. Their relationship reached a breaking point when Daniel forgot their 7th wedding anniversary. Emily had planned a romantic dinner, but Daniel came home late, apologizing profusely. "I'm so sorry, babe. Work has been insane," he said, handing her a bouquet of flowers. Emily forced a smile, but inside, she was heartbroken. "It's okay," she said, though it wasn't. That night, as she lay in bed, she wondered if they were just going through the motions. The next morning, Emily decided to take matters into her own hands. She booked a weekend getaway to the same beach where Daniel had proposed. "We need this," she told him. "We need to reconnect." Daniel agreed, and for the first time in years, they spent an entire weekend focused on each other. They walked along the beach, talked for hours, and even danced under the stars. "I've missed this," Daniel said, holding her close. "Me too," Emily replied, feeling a glimmer of hope. But as they returned to their daily lives, the same old patterns resurfaced. Daniel was back to working late, and Emily was left feeling lonely and unappreciated. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," she confided in her best friend, Sarah. "You need to talk to him," Sarah advised. "Tell him how you're feeling." Emily knew she was right, but the thought of confronting Daniel was terrifying. She loved him, but she wasn't sure if love was enough anymore. Daniel's career continued to soar, but at a cost. He was now a senior partner at his firm, and the demands were relentless. "I'm doing this for us," he told Emily one night as he packed for yet another business trip. "I know," she replied, but her voice was tinged with resentment. She had sacrificed so much for their family, and it felt like Daniel was taking her for granted. Emily, meanwhile, had returned to work part-time as a freelance journalist. She enjoyed the flexibility, but it wasn't the same as having a full-time career. "I feel like I've lost a part of myself," she admitted to Daniel one evening. "You're still the same amazing woman I fell in love with," he said, but Emily wasn't so sure. She missed the thrill of chasing a story, the sense of purpose it gave her. Their differing priorities began to create a rift between them. Daniel was focused on providing for their family, while Emily longed for more emotional connection. "I need you to be present," she told him one night after a particularly heated argument. "I'm trying," Daniel replied, but his words fell hollow. Emily couldn't help but wonder if they were growing apart. Lily, now a teenager, was caught in the middle. She adored both her parents, but could sense the tension between them. "Why do you and Dad fight so much?" she asked Emily one day. "We're just going through a rough patch," Emily replied, though she knew it was more than that. She didn't want to burden Lily with her problems, but it was becoming harder to hide the cracks in their marriage. Despite the challenges, Daniel and Emily tried to keep up appearances. They attended Lily's school events together and put on a united front for their friends and family. But behind closed doors, the distance between them was growing. "I don't know how to fix this," Daniel admitted one night. "Maybe we don't need to fix it," Emily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we just need to accept that we've changed." Years passed, and Lily grew into a bright, ambitious young woman. She graduated from Harvard with honors, and Daniel and Emily couldn't have been prouder. "You've made us so proud," Daniel said, tears in his eyes as he hugged her. "Thanks, Dad," Lily replied, beaming. Emily watched them, her heart swelling with love and pride, but also a sense of loss. She couldn't believe how quickly the time had flown by. At her graduation party, Lily introduced her parents to her boyfriend, Ethan. He was handsome, kind, and clearly head over heels for their daughter. "It's so nice to finally meet you," Ethan said, shaking Daniel's hand. "Likewise," Daniel replied, though Emily noticed a hint of skepticism in his tone. She, on the other hand, was immediately charmed by Ethan. "You've got a good one," she whispered to Lily. "I know," Lily replied, her eyes sparkling. As the night went on, Emily couldn't help but notice Ethan's older brother, Ryan. He was tall, with piercing blue eyes and a confident demeanor. They struck up conversation, and Emily found herself laughing at his jokes and enjoying his company. "You're quite the charmer," she teased. "Guilty as charged," Ryan replied with a wink. There was an undeniable chemistry between them, though Emily tried to brush it off. Daniel, however, wasn't so oblivious. He watched from across the room as Emily and Ryan talked, a knot forming in his stomach. "Who's that guy?" he asked Lily. "Oh, that's Ryan, Ethan's brother," Lily replied. "He's a bit of a player, but he's harmless." Daniel nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He trusted Emily, but the way she was smiling at Ryan made him uneasy. As the night came to an end, Emily found herself thinking about Ryan more than she cared to admit. She knew it was wrong, but there was something about him that made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. "I'm just being silly," she told herself as she got into bed. But deep down, she knew that her feelings for Ryan were more than just a passing fancy. A year later, Lily and Ethan got engaged, and the entire family was thrilled. "I'm so happy for you," Emily said, hugging her daughter tightly. "Thanks, Mom," Lily replied, her eyes shining with joy. Daniel, however, was more reserved. "Are you sure about this?" he asked Lily. "Dad, I love him," Lily said firmly. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Daniel nodded, but Emily could see the worry in his eyes. The engagement brought the family together, but also highlighted the growing distance between Daniel and Emily. They were polite to each other, but the warmth and affection that had once defined their relationship were gone. "We need to talk," Emily said one night after a particularly tense dinner. "About what?" Daniel asked, though he already knew the answer. "About us," Emily replied. "I feel like we're just roommates at this point." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know things haven't been great, but I'm trying, Trying isn't enough," Emily said, her voice breaking. I need more from you. I need you to be present, to show me that you still care. Daniel looked at her, his eyes filled with regret. I do care, he said. I just don't know how to fix this. Their conversation ended in a stalemate, and the tension between them continued to grow. Emily found herself spending more time with Ryan, who had become a regular presence in their lives. He was always there to lend an ear or offer a kind word, and Emily couldn't help but be drawn to him. You're a good friend, she told him one evening. I try, Ryan replied with a smile. But there was something in his eyes that made Emily's heart race. Daniel, meanwhile, was becoming increasingly suspicious. He noticed the way Emily's face lit up when Ryan was around, and it made him uneasy. What's going on between you and Ryan? He asked one night. Nothing, Emily replied, though her voice wavered. We're just friends. Daniel didn't believe her, but he didn't press the issue. He didn't want to believe that his wife could be unfaithful, but the doubt was there, gnawing at him. As the wedding planning got underway, the tension between Daniel and Emily reached a boiling point. They argued constantly, and Lily was caught in the middle. Why can't you two just get along? She asked, tears in her eyes. We're trying, Emily said, though she knew it wasn't enough. She hated seeing her daughter so upset, but she didn't know how to fix things with Daniel. The love that had once brought them together seemed to be slipping through her fingers, and she wasn't sure she could hold on. The day of Lily's wedding was bittersweet for Emily. She was thrilled to see her daughter so happy, but the strain between her and Daniel was palpable. They barely spoke as they got ready for the ceremony, and Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. This should be the happiest day of our lives, she thought. So, why does it feel like everything is falling apart? The ceremony was beautiful, and for a moment, Emily forgot about her troubles. She watched as Lily and Ethan exchanged vows, her heart swelling with pride. But as the reception got underway, the tension returned. Daniel was busy talking to guests, while Emily found herself drawn to Ryan. They danced together, laughed together, and for the first time in years, Emily felt alive. As the night wore on, the alcohol flowed freely, and Emily's inhibitions began to fade. She and Ryan found themselves alone outside, the cool night air a stark contrast to the heat of the reception. You're amazing, you know that? Ryan said, his voice low. So are you, Emily replied, her heart racing. They leaned in, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss. It was wrong, but in that moment, neither of them cared. They stumbled to Ryan's car, their hands fumbling with buttons and zippers. It was quick and reckless, fueled by alcohol and years of pent-up frustration. But as they lay there, the reality of what they had done began to sink in. This was a mistake, Emily said, her voice trembling. Maybe, Ryan replied, though he didn't sound convinced. They got dressed in silence, the weight of their actions hanging heavy in the air. As they stepped out of the car, they were met with the horrified gaze of Daniel. He had been looking for Emily and had seen everything. How could you? He asked, his voice shaking with anger and betrayal. Emily opened her mouth to explain, but no words came out. She knew there was no excuse for what she had done. The damage was irreparable. The rest of the wedding was a blur. Daniel confronted Emily in front of everyone, and the celebration quickly turned into a nightmare. Lily was devastated, unable to comprehend what had just happened. How could you do this to us? She asked, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Emily replied, though she knew her words meant nothing. The damage had been done. Daniel moved out that night, and Emily was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. She tried to reach out to Lily, but her daughter wanted nothing to do with her. You ruined everything, Lily said, her voice cold. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. Emily's heart broke, but she knew she deserved it. She had made a terrible mistake, and now she was paying the price. Ryan, meanwhile, disappeared from their lives. He knew he had crossed a line, and he didn't want to make things worse. Emily tried to move on, but the guilt and shame were overwhelming. She had lost her husband, her daughter, and her self-respect. How did it come to this? She asked herself, though she knew the answer. She had let her loneliness and dissatisfaction cloud her judgment, and now she was paying the price. Daniel filed for divorce, and the proceedings were bitter and acrimonious. They fought over everything, from the house to custody of Lily. In the end, they agreed to sell the house and split the proceeds. Lily, now married to Ethan, distanced herself from both of her parents. She couldn't forgive them for what had happened, and she needed time to heal. Emily and Daniel went their separate ways, both starting over in their own ways. Emily moved to a small apartment in the city, while Daniel threw himself into his work. They tried to move on, but the scars of their betrayal ran deep. They had once been so in love, but now they were strangers, their lives forever changed by one fateful night. Years passed, and life went on. Emily found solace in her work, throwing herself into her writing. She published a memoir about her experiences, which was met with mixed reviews. Some praised her honesty, while others criticized her for airing her dirty laundry. But for Emily, it was a way to make sense of everything that had happened. "I made a mistake," she wrote, "but I'm trying to learn from it and move on." Daniel, meanwhile, had thrown himself into his career. He became a workaholic, using his job as a way to numb the pain. He dated occasionally, but nothing serious. He couldn't bring himself to trust anyone again, not after what had happened with Emily. "I thought we had it all," he told a friend one night, "but I guess I was wrong." Lily, now a successful lawyer, had started a family of her own. She had a son, and though she had reconciled with her parents to some extent, there was still a distance between them. "I love you, Mom," she told Emily one day. But what happened, it changed everything. Emily nodded, tears in her eyes. "I know," she said, "and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you." As the years went by, Emily and Daniel both found a sense of peace. They had made mistakes, but they had also learned from them. They had lost each other, but they had also found themselves. And though their lives had taken different paths, they both knew that they would always carry a piece of each other with them. Emily sat on a park bench, watching the leaves fall from the trees. It had been years since the divorce, but the memories still haunted her. She thought about Daniel, about the life they had built together, and how it had all fallen apart. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though she knew he couldn't hear her. She had made a mistake, but she had also learned from it. She had grown, and she had found a way to move on. Daniel, meanwhile, was sitting in his office, staring at a photo of Emily and Lily from years ago. He missed them, but he knew that things could never go back to the way they were. "I forgive you," he said, though he knew she couldn't hear him. He had made mistakes too, and he had learned from them. He had grown, and he had found a way to move on. Lily, now a mother herself, watched her parents from a distance. She had forgiven them, but she knew that things would never be the same. "I love you," she said, though she knew they couldn't hear her. She had learned from their mistakes, and she was determined to build a life filled with love and trust. As the sun set, Emily, Daniel, and Lily all found themselves reflecting on the past. They had made mistakes, but they had also learned from them. They had lost each other, but they had also found themselves. And though their lives had taken different paths, they all knew that they would always carry a piece of each other with them. The end.